Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back, and today we are checking out this. It's a new piece of kit that I got from a company called Producely. This is called Dialr. It's a plugin controller with some neat ideas that we're going to talk about in just a second. Now, Producely, I actually checked this out at Superbooth this year, and I was quite impressed by the ideas that they had. Since been in touch, and they sent me this unit to check out. And like I said, they've got some interesting ideas with this, and they're trying to broach a problem that has been around for ages when it comes to interacting with the plugins on your computer, and that's finding a controller that can control stuff without tons of prep work and mapping and so on, and something that can be used across any sort of plugin brand as well. Now, there has been other attempts at this. I think like one of the first sort of major cases of this being way back when with something like Automap from Novation, which I had a number of controllers that, at the time they worked well, but it was never really, that seamless to use all the time. Then you've got other things like, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about stuff like Softtube's Console one, which is fantastic, but it's more of it needs to be compatible. There's no sort of, you can't just run any random plugin on any channel and have it pick it up. Same goes for stuff like, I haven't used them personally, but I know that the SSL ones, for example, there's an option to load any plugin in there and build a map for it. But again, it's this idea of having to do all that stuff manually yourself. So, enter Dialr. And what they're doing here is approaching the mapping process by incorporating an AI system into this that scans your plugins and then tries to derive names or sort of more logical names for controller data within your plugins, also the plugin IDs and such, and then presents it in a form factor that you can easily access, but also something that encourages muscle memory. This is not a second screen that you're going to be using. It aims to kind of take the plugin data that you have on your system, or the plugin parameters, and present them in a way that's kind of uniform across everything. And we're going to cover that in just a second, but I think so far, I think it's really cool. I've been having a lot of fun with this. Build quality and stuff is excellent. We're going to talk about that right now as well. The only caveat with this so far is that the software side of it's not 100% ready, which is why I wanted to kind of do like a first impressions video with this for now. I have been chatting to the developers directly as well, and they've got a ton of ideas, and development does seem to be moving forward pretty quickly. They've just released a new update for this as well, which handles some incompatibility issues as well. But as it stands right now, this is going to work with Ableton and Cubase only. You will have to wait for other DAWs to be incorporated into the system. There are a couple of plugins that cause issues as well. Something like Omnisphere, for example, and I'm guessing things like Falcon from UVI. Inherently, these are problematic because they do not have permanently assigned parameters a lot of the time. Like if you want to, say, modulate a filter in Omnisphere, you have to first assign it a parameter, which it then temporarily assigns to that filter cutoff to be used in your DAW. Now that makes it difficult for something like this to scan it prior to actually using the plugin in your production environment. There are a few minor issues as well with things like plugins that come in wrappers. I know Native Instruments, they've had a few issues with as well. They are actively working to resolve those right now. The other thing as well is that the AI is not quite up to scratch yet. As anybody that uses AI on a daily basis knows, that it's never 100% right all the time. I did come across a few instances where it had downloaded incorrect images for a plugin, or hadn't mapped things the way that I expected it to. But as with any AI, the more you train it, the more kind of, the more they build their database on the cloud side of this thing, with different plugins that are being scanned by users all the time, the more accurate it is going to get. There are some tools available to you to fix errors like that when they do occur, but they are also implementing a whole bunch more customization options as well, which we'll also take a look at in just a sec. Right, so first, before we get into the software side of things, let's just talk about the build for 1 second, because it's a really solid device. It feels really good. It's a nice weight. I'm guessing it's aluminium because it doesn't feel super heavy, but it's heavy enough, to feel like it's going to sit tightly on your desk. I really like this finish. It's quite minimalist, the whole thing. You're looking at just a single USB-C port in the back. Yeah, so solid build quality. The main thing here is the knobs. The knobs are a really pleasant experience. They've got a nice weight to them, and they don't feel like a plasticky synth knob that you can kind of throw all over the place. Now, this will obviously work with synths as well. Any instrument plugin you'll be able to control with this. Where I enjoyed it the most was using it with mixing plugins. So anything like a compressor or an EQ or whatever, this action on these knobs, I mean, they're metal and they've got a weight to them. They feel like analog hardware, and it's really nice kind of dialing in and fine-tuning stuff like a compressor threshold or EQs and stuff like that. It just made a whole lot of sense. I also like the decisions that they've made in terms of the design of this. I like the fact that you've got these different sizes. You can see how something like this would work. When you start mapping plugins to this, it helps to kind of follow a sort of standardized pattern that you can use. The AI should do that for you, but like I said, it's not 100% right yet. But you can also modify those to your own standards. So like, you can imagine something like an EQ, for example. You can have the gains on all the big ones, so it's easy to kind of recall what does what. And then put your frequencies, or maybe frequencies on the big ones, gains on the middle-sized ones, and then you've got these smaller ones which could handle Q values for an EQ. So it makes sense like that. It's easy to differentiate between the two of them without even looking at the screen. The idea being here as well that you'd try to map the same parameters for the same kind of plugin. So you'd always try and do like threshold on one of these for a compressor, for example, and maybe, like I said, gains and Qs and whatever for EQs. You don't have to do it that way either, but that for me makes the most sense in terms of having a unit that you can reach for and control any plugin at a moment's notice. Now there's also a touchscreen in the middle here. It's a pretty clear touchscreen. It's a little bit reflective, but it is really easy to see what's going on. It's got a pretty good viewing angle as well, even from the sides you can kind of see it. It's not multi-touch, and it's not the fastest reacting touchscreen this either, but then again, the way that the touchscreen is being used here, it's not intended to be used like an iPad. It's really, a lot of the controls that get assigned to the actual touch surface here are kind of switches on and off, or selectors that you can use. In which case that it works absolutely perfect for that. And it's just a really nice kind of minimal display that you get, which I like. There are other devices out there that have these kind of screens that can mirror your actual plugin interface and stuff. But I think Producely's approach to this in trying to kind of minimize the sort of clutter and stuff on the screen actually works pretty well as well, and have sort of a unified interface so that you have the same information from plugin to plugin without having to sort of adjust to new kinds of interfaces and stuff. And also, if you hate skeuomorphic stuff, then this is going to be great. Right, so let's talk about the software first. It's a pretty straightforward process to get set up with this. Literally just open up the box, get this out, plug it in, and download the Node software from Producely. So this is Node. This is basically your sort of gateway to their cloud. It's also going to scan your plugins as soon as you start this up. You have some settings here to kind of direct it to where your plugins may be. For example, you can keep this in your app tray as well, just running in the background. There's some additional stuff that you can set here as well. I think I mentioned that this currently is only available for Ableton and Cubase. One little quirk here is that you have to set it prior to using your DAW currently. You're either going to be using it in Cubase mode or Ableton Live mode. Now, I think for most users, that's not going to be too much of a problem there. But just bear that in mind if you were planning on switching between, tabbing from one to the next and doing it that way. It's not quite going to work that way, as far as I know. My experience has been on a Windows machine as well. It can be a little bit more finicky when it comes to sharing MIDI drivers and things. Maybe on a Mac, you are slightly more flexible in that regard. I'm not 100% sure about that. Yeah, so one other thing that you have to bear in mind if you're looking at this from a Cubase user's perspective. So on Windows, you're going to require virtual MIDI ports for this, and Windows does not natively support that. So what you will have to do is install a third-party piece of software called Loop MIDI. Loop MIDI, you just need to essentially create 2 virtual ports for the unit, and that's it. Aside from that, there's no real other setup. It just works. You go into the DAW that you're using and you select Producely as a control surface, and that's it. It will pick up everything that it needs to and connect to the plugins that you're using, as well as tracks. You can navigate tracks and pages of plugins and so forth with this. I wanted to show you the scanning process as well. Once this has been scanned, you can come into this plugin section. Now you see some of them don't always go through 100%. These ones didn't. They scanned the plugins, but there wasn't data in the cloud for that. You see a lot of this other stuff is picked up just fine. Every now and then I have come across an issue with like this Native Instruments one, for instance, where it's gone to look for the user interface online to automatically attach that to the display. But in this case, it's gotten something from a website somewhere that's not 100% right. Now, this will improve over time as their database gets better. The Steinberg stuff has not scanned properly. It doesn't support the native DAW plugins just yet either. That is also coming soon. And let's come down to, let's take Claro, for instance, here. It hasn't got a screenshot for this one, but we can say create a screenshot here by clicking on the 3 button, the little menu button there. And it will open up an additional window where you can just say take screenshot for that, and there you go. It snaps a screenshot, it will connect it to that device, so now you've got a visual representation there. And this shows up in the Dialr interface as well, the snapshots, so you know exactly which plugin you are using at the time. Let's take color copy, for instance. We can click on that and go into the interface here, which will allow you to kind of modify the mapping that it's come up with. Now, this is pretty much straight out the box. Nothing's been modified yet. This is the AI profile that it's come up with. So you can see it's gone and found like ducking mode, for example. It's linked it to that button there. The frequency is linked to this one, frequency dynamics, time base, whatever mix. Nothing here was mapped manually by me at all. It's just gone and done it automatically. Now, I don't always 100% agree with what the AI has done here. In that case, you can just change that. So let's say I don't like any of this stuff. We can look over here. You've got all of the available parameters that it's scanned, and you can just move them around. So this is the main page. You can relabel this as delay main or whatever you want. Let's say hello. That'll show up on the screen. We can decide that maybe the regeneration is something that's more important to us. So we want to just, you can click here and you'll see you've got the regeneration settings. You can change the polarity of that as well. But you can search through these parameters and you've got regeneration here, and we could just say we want that to be here. Now, as of now, there isn't a ton of options that you have here in terms of editing names and things. In some cases, I want to be able to edit the actual names. This is actually a classic example where you've got something like regeneration here. I would actually just want that to be feedback. Right now, you can't rename that, but you will be able to do that soon. The other thing that I did actually ask them about is right now the color system, or the color combination that you get per plugin is just kind of randomly generated. I would really like to see something that you could manually control for that. For instance, like I color code a lot of stuff in Bitwig. My plugins that are all related to time-based effects like reverb and delays are all a light blue, and it would be really nice to have a light blue color scheme for every single plugin like that on this. That is coming as well, as far as I know. So yeah, not super complicated. This is just a case of kind of moving things around. It does all of the scanning for you, and you've got all the options that you can assign to various areas here. So just kind of scrolling through here, you can see just I've tested a number of plugins with this. I think most of the Softube stuff was perfect. This Eventide stuff was great. Sound choice stuff came through perfectly. For the most part, all the plugin aligned stuff as well. Native Instruments, there's one or two things that were a little bit weird. Some of them, like I said, these ones are just like images that hadn't come through properly. And there's a few other quirks. You know, when you've got a plugin that's kind of a narrower user interface like this, you'll see those kind of blur out a little bit because of the way that they're scaling the sizes of the images. But I'm sure a lot of that stuff will be kind of, see, this one's kind of come out with the sort of a marketing image rather than the original one. Create a screenshot manually for this one. Take the screenshot. And there it's updated. But you can see again now with this kind of slightly different aspect ratio for the plugin, it's not scaling it correctly, so hopefully that's something they will fix as well soon. So there's a few other quirks. Another one that I mentioned to the developers was the fact that if you come and edit any of the plugins, for example, coming back to the plugin window actually goes back to the top of the list. Now this is something you can circumvent by actually adding some filters, like we can add in your, let's say, isotope, or let's go with Softube, for example. You just grab Softube as a filter, and now you will have, there's another one that didn't get its screenshot, so we can just rectify that once again. There you go. Now we've got Drama in there. Let's edit that one. Let's see, it's automatically grabbed all the bands, low band saturation, low mid sat, high sat. That all makes, see, this is actually a really good example of one that's just makes a lot of sense to me, just the way that they've set this out. It's done a really good job with that. If you scroll down, you can see there's multiple different pages as well, so this would be a secondary page. Right, so just to show off how this works quickly, this is essentially the only info that you see as a controller. You've got undo and redo capabilities here, so if you bump anything on this, you can just quickly undo it, which is great. And then basically the right-hand side, you've got a bypass switch, and your selection on the right is going to handle your pages of each plugin, as well as jump back to the previous plugin that you used. If you move to another channel, for example, you can jump back to the one that you were on before just by clicking that in. And then on the other side, you've got this other select button, which is essentially your track selection and your plugin selection. Clicking this will change the mode. I'll go here and just insert two plugins or two audio channels that you can see what's going on here. On channel 1, we'll just go and open up. Let's go with a dynamics processor maybe, and we'll just choose this FET compressor 2 from Softtube. There we go. All my stuff has popped up here. I've got an image of the compressor on the screen, and that's pretty much it. I'm good to go here. You can see I can dial in the attack. I've got attack and ratio settings there. We can scroll between the different pages. Right, sorry, 1176, so we don't have a threshold dial here. So we've got input and output linked to the bottom ones. Those two make sense. You can see again, it's done the two big controls. That makes a lot of sense to be able to dial in your ins and outs, which is going to give you the amount of compression. Ratio controls over here. Yeah, and that's pretty much straight out the box. So now if we were to have an additional plugin over here, and let's grab maybe a reverb, for example. We'll take something like Valhalla's vintage verb there. It's popped up on the screen here already. I have access to the modes at the bottom. We can change the mix on the reverb here. We've got stuff like the decay time, for example, the size of the reverb. This one on the left, we can switch between track and plugin mode. So in plugin mode right now, that has switch me back to the compressor, and you can see I can change the drive or the attack again on that one. One click to the right now and we're back on the reverb. We can adjust that. Let's go back to the compressor again. You can see how that works. And if you click that down, you're now in track select mode, so we can actually go through to audio track 2, which currently we don't have any plugins on, but if I was to add something there, and let's add in an EQ, for example, on the side. Let's go with Claro that we did the screenshot for maybe. Now Claro, it's picked up everything that's on the front panel here pretty well. I just would like the ability to change some of the names here because some of them are a little bit long, and I might want something a little bit easier to read from a distance for me personally. But yeah, everything's mapped, and you can see we can now jump back to channel 1, and now I'm on the compressor. Click change to the Valhalla reverb. Click change back to channel 2, and I'm back on the Claro again. So what I love about this as well, and I've used this now a few times in a couple of mastering projects, particularly for something like that, it's really nice to be able to have this set up in front of me here and not look at the screen at all. When I've come down to final mixdowns, I really want to kind of dial in a compressor or dial in some sort of mastering processing on this, to have all the controls here, be able to shut your eyes, and then just kind of, like I said, from a tactile perspective, the way that the knobs are implemented at different sizes, it's quite easy to kind of just find your way around this without thinking too much. So I really like the little layout of this, and just the whole feel of the thing is pretty great. Right, so what do we think about Producely's Dialr? Now, like I said, I want to refrain from calling this a review per se, because I do think that this is a work in progress, but I will say that I think this is an exceptionally cool idea, and so far my experience with it has been really good. I love how easy it is to set up. I love the feel of the unit. I love the idea behind it. I think it has a ton of potential once you start getting used to the way that this is laid out, and the sort of idea behind having this more minimal interface that's going to be the sort of standard for all your plugins to look like. I think it's really good. Excellent build quality. As to recommendations as to whether you want to get one of these, that's really going to be up to you and what your current setup is. Like I said, right now, You don't have the option for Bitwig or other DAWs. You are limited to Cubase and you are limited to Ableton Live for now. But they are working on more support, so that is coming down the line. One thing to bear in mind, the initial run of these that they did are going to be less money. They will go up in price once those sell out. So from that respect, you know, maybe getting one of these now would be a good idea for you if it's something that you've got your heart set on. Yeah, aside from that, we'll have to wait and see what happens in terms of the development of the software side of this. But I am pretty optimistic. I think if they fix some of the little quirks and some of the current sort of incompatibility issues and little bugs here and there, and a few kind of quality of life things, yeah, I think once they nail that, this is going to be a really cool piece of kit, and I think there's a lot of scope to develop this further as well. As far as I know, this is pretty reliant on the software, so they could do a lot more with what you're getting here, utilizing the touchscreen and the knobs in different ways, I think. But for what it does right now, pretty cool. I really like the idea, and it's a really solid little piece of kit, this. Right, so if you're interested in the Dialr from Producely, you can go check it out. I'll leave the link below. There's not a ton of information online about this yet, but like I said, yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised with it so far, and I'm eagerly awaiting to see what they do in terms of the updates with this, particularly Bitwig. I'm really looking forward to. Right, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you soon. Till then, take care. I'll see you then. Cheers.